All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to SaberSim's DFS Office Hours. It is Monday, January 10th of 2022. We are closing out Week 18. I guess we already have closed out Week 18 with no Monday Night Football tonight. So you know what that means. It is our last week, our last day here of doing the Weekly Max Challenge. So first things first, we'll go ahead, we'll announce our winners of the Weekly Max Challenge for this week. We'll do our giveaways. I'll talk a little bit here about what to expect next as we start to wrap up the season here. I know there'll be some swag, some goodies, some prizes that we're giving out, a couple free rolls coming up here pretty quick. So I'll have a little bit of news on that, but we'll go ahead and just get started here. I know there won't be another week of this here with no week 19 coming up or anything like that. So probably no need to explain exactly what this contest is, but this is something we are planning on doing again in the future. So if you're seeing this for the very first time, we ran a contest all NFL season, a giveaway where if you used the SaberSim logo as your avatar and then played either the Minimax or the Pooch Punt, you had the opportunity to win some prizes, play in some giveaways and things like that. This has been, I would say, mostly a pretty good success. It seems like it's been a lot of fun. It's certainly been a lot of fun for us. I know we've had a couple hiccups here and there with getting tickets out and working with the sites and making sure everything's working smoothly. But I think broadly speaking, this was a lot of fun. It was a big success. So we are planning on doing this again. We will probably bring this back at some point, almost certainly for NFL season next year, maybe for baseball or something else, or maybe just here and there when we can put something together to do more of these giveaways, because I think it was a lot of fun for everybody here. But anyway, let's go ahead. Let's announce our winners for this week. So exciting news on the Minimax for this week. We had our second dink of the season. Pretty amazing to have two wins up at the top over just an 18-week sample size. I think we've averaged about 60 to 80 or so people entering every week, but to have two of you guys take down first here this season is pretty amazing. So let me go ahead and pull this up. It is BCAP 888 taking down first place in this week's Minimax. So congratulations. I know BCAP here is pretty regularly in these office hours streams. So not sure if he's here today. Give me a wave if you're here, but congratulations. Not only obviously taking down the contest and winning 10 grand that you get from the contest here, but we'll go ahead. We'll be giving you an extra $1,000 cash, a free year of SaberSim, and a custom championship belt. I know Cody took it down earlier this season here. So our second winner of the Minimax. Pretty amazing there. Pretty awesome stuff. So congratulations. And on the FanDuel side, top overall finisher here in this case, 12th place, Moose 2016. So Moose, we will get you $25 of SaberSim credit that will pay for $25 of FanDuel entries if you want it. That was originally what this prize was here. We shifted over to the credit about halfway through the season here, but $25 in SaberSim credit, along with an additional free month of SaberSim and an entry to the private $1,000 free roll that we'll be running here. So while we were talking about the free rolls here, I need to touch base with Andy, the rest of the team, the sites, and start figuring out exactly what we're going to get this to be. Our plan is, what we are going to try to be doing here is for this weekend, for wildcard weekend, to be doing the free rolls on both DraftKings and FanDuel. It will be limited to one entry per person. So I know there were some questions about that last week. A few of you guys that maybe you've been the top finisher in one or multiple weeks. Obviously, it's also listed here for the play all 18 weeks prizes here, right? This entry to the free roll. It will be, a single entry here. It was a little bit complicated to just get this set up quickly enough where it could be like a multi-entry thing, but not everybody had a multi-entry ticket or things like that. So it's just going to be a single entry. If you have a ticket, you have a ticket. You go to the free roll here. So more information on that. We're going to get information out as quickly as possible this week to figure out what that looks like. It's possible that this free roll ends up being for the divisional weekend of NFL next week, if that's the way it ends up shaking out. But we'll keep everybody posted on what this looks like here. Other note regarding the 18 weeks. thing. So, but as soon as I hop off today, we'll go ahead. We'll start combining all our notes from all the weeks here and put together probably a master list we have of everybody that on our end has participated in all 18 weeks. Get that all together and then reach out to everybody about kind of expectations for getting your prizes out to you for the Yeti stuff and the free SaberSim and so on for the 18 weeks prizes. So all of that in the first couple days this week. Hopefully we'll get that all moving and get things going there. So be patient with us. Quite a bit of like administrative stuff for us to get together as we're getting through this end of the giveaway here and giving out all the prizes. But we're super excited about going forward here. But anyway, we have one other thing to do with the Weekly Max Challenge this week, and that is our last giveaway. So 3 giveaway winners for the DraftKings side, 10 giveaway winners for the FanDuel side. Again, no more tickets at this point in the season. We aren't able to get tickets out anymore. But on the DraftKings side, you'll get $75 of SaberSim credit that theoretically pays for, I guess, maybe the wild card weekend mini max if you want to enter that, or if you're playing NBA, or really you'll just have $75. You can do whatever you want with it. On FanDuel side, $7.50 delivered as SaberSim credit as well. So let's go ahead and get into this here. We'll do DraftKings first. 46 entrants for our last giveaway of the season here. 46 up top. Looks good. Our last day using Wheel of Names here. So it's been good to us this season for sure. And let's get into it here. So go ahead. It looks like we shuffled the list up a little bit here, and we'll do our first spin. And it looks like winner number 1 here, Russell is a beast. Russell is a beast 1. More specifically. So congratulations, Russell. Let's get spin number 2 here. And it is UVAJ. Congratulations. And our third winner on the DraftKings side for the final week of the Weekly Max Challenge here is JT Construct, who I saw was right ahead of me all day in every single showdown I was playing. So congratulations, JT Construct, on your giveaway win here. And maybe I can catch up to you on those showdowns tonight. I noticed every single showdown I looked at yesterday was always JT Construct was right in front of me. I was trying to catch him in everything yesterday. So our 3 winners on the DraftKings side, again, Russell is a beast, UVAJ, and JT Construct, $75 of SaberSim credit. We'll get that out to you guys this afternoon or first thing tomorrow morning here. Let me go ahead and note those down. And we'll go ahead and jump to the FanDuel side quickly here. And 10 pulls of the lever here, 57 entrants on the FanDuel side for today. And let's go ahead. Let's clear this. And clear this. 57 looks good. Shuffle. We'll do 10 of these here. Again, $7.50 in SaberSim credit. Some of you guys that have participated here throughout the season have been able to rack up, a couple weeks of this here and really knock off a little bit of that next invoice there. First winner, Rimmy Toes. Congratulations. And spin number 2 here. Is Ryux. Congratulations, Ryux. And winner number 3 here. I don't have my headphones on today. I realize I don't need, actually, Andy told me, he was like, you don't really need your headphones for the stream because nobody's talking back to you. And he's right. Ogden 33302 is our third winner here. Congratulations, Ogden. Let's get to number 4 here. But anyway, I realized he was right. It doesn't really make any sense for me to have my headphones on when I'm doing this because I don't hear anything. But I certainly feel a little naked, I guess, here today without them on. So winner number 4, Dice Hawk. Congratulations, Dice Hawk. And our 5th winner here is Enemy Mine. Winner number 6. J115. Winner number 7, Canopticopter. Winner number 8 here is Underrated 33. Congratulations, Underrated. 2 more as we wrap up the end of the weekly max challenge for this season, at least. BCW takes one of those spots here, our 9th winner. And our 10th and final giveaway winner for the weekly max challenge for the, I guess it's the 2021-2022 NFL season. Let's do it. Is They Call Me the King. The King takes it home for our last final giveaway winner of this season. So congratulations again to all of our giveaway winners here. Let me go ahead and grab this list just so I have got it here. And to our 13 giveaway winners, as always, you'll get an email before the end of the day today, most likely, maybe first thing tomorrow, depending on how the afternoon goes, letting you know that you won, getting your SaberSim credit onto your account. So congratulations to our giveaway winners, to our 2 highest scorers, and of course to our binker to BCAP here. You guys will get an email also around the same time, letting you know when to expect your winnings and prizes and things like that. I know, Brian, you've got a championship belt coming your way here. So pretty exciting stuff there. And then to everybody that has either a ticket to the free roll or has participated in all 18 weeks, and let's pull this up again, and has the Yeti gear, 3 months of SaberSim, everything like that also coming to you guys. Pay attention over the next, I would say, couple days to your email. We'll also probably try to do announcements in Slack just so we don't miss anyone. But I think what will probably end up happening there is if we have you down as having participated for all 18 weeks or have you down as having won a free roll ticket, you should probably be getting an email in the next couple days, letting you know what's going on. Here's the contest, here's how to enter, and so on the sites, or here's when to expect your Yeti gear. We've applied your three free months of SaberSim to your account, etc. on the 18 weeks thing. So should have all of this kind of moving throughout the week. But congratulations again to everybody really that has won throughout the season. It's been a lot of fun doing this. We'll get the free roll going and start doing some kind of the final last steps here for the giveaway this season. But cool. I think that just about does it for the weekly max challenge stuff here. I see we do have quite a few people that have joined up into the stream now. So welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll go ahead and transition here. Okay, JT's here. He said, if you need a lesson on the showdowns, let me know. Yeah, that'd be great. Maybe you shoot me a message with some of your tips here. I was chasing you all day yesterday. I was looking at like every single showdown and trying to catch up there. And I saw you were ahead of me in like every single one. So, but let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and jump in here and start answering some questions. Again, welcome everybody. I see we've had a lot of people join the stream here since we first started. So we just wrapped up our last weekly max challenge segment here for this season. And we'll go ahead and we'll start jumping into open Q&A. We have quite a few questions to get to today, actually. So we have, let's see, let me go ahead and pull up my channel in Slack. But a lot of questions here. Let's see. couple questions about projections and custom projections. I think maybe some late swap questions here. Quite a bit of content here, I guess, from Pin Seeker. So we'll go ahead and we'll work our way through this question here. Some questions about editing exposures, showdown contest selection, all kinds of stuff here. And I see there's already questions coming in YouTube chat as well. So that's all awesome. I promise we'll get to everything as much as we can here. And if you have questions, pop them in the chat. I'll answer questions in roughly the order that they come in here. So get your questions in sooner, and then we'll get to them here. First of all, I'll just hit this real quick, just from Ponda619 here. What are the plans for office hours once the NFL season ends? Office hours, we'll just keep going on. We did it before NFL. We'll keep doing it after. We just won't have this weekly max challenge segment on Monday mornings or Monday afternoons anymore. But we will just keep it going. Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, all year long. So it kind of just transitions throughout the year as we're talking about different sports. Earlier this summer, it was baseball pretty much every single day, and then football starts to creep in, and I imagine it'll be a lot of basketball coming up here pretty soon, but maybe some other questions about other sports and things like that. So we'll keep it going. But okay, cool. So I'm going to start with the questions that came in Slack. I know. Okay, so there was a question here about college basketball. I will just touch on this real quickly. It was basically asking for more college basketball content. We are pushing that direction both with the product and with the content. I actually see Jody's right here right now. So I saw, Jody, your question here. We are working kind of behind the scenes on slowly starting to get a college basketball model spun up. Once we get that going on our end, we will support that with some additional content here on the college basketball side. So maybe may pull in other members of the SaberSim team that are familiar with college basketball. Maybe do a couple strategy sessions here to get the ball rolling, get things going here. I've been playing NBA for like 6 years, but have never played a college basketball slate. So maybe we'll need a little bit of pointers there on some of the differences there. But that is something we are kind of working on, pushing towards investing more in with the product. And when we do that, we will also, follow up with some of the content there as well. So I'm not the right person to ask right now. There's nothing in the app, to be completely honest, beyond just the slates. But we are going that direction. So, okay, cool. So, holy smokes. Okay, so there's a long question here from Pin Seeker. I think here's what I'm going to do. This question is a little bit long here for me to figure out exactly and answer right now. So Pin Seeker, if you're watching, I'm going to go ahead. I'll answer your other questions here because I think they're a little shorter. And what I'll do is as soon as I hop off the stream, I will read this question and figure out exactly what's going on here, and then either write you a response or we'll talk about this question tomorrow. But just want to make sure I do this justice because I think there's just a lot of content here. But I will answer this one here, and this question says, on a past office hours video, you had DK entered many dummy lineups in many different contest formats. You went back to SaberSim, built for the exact amount of dummies, went back in and replaced the dummies in one swap. But correct me if I'm wrong or missed something. Weren't the contests all different and your lineups compromised or not optimal? Or is this the I don't have time process? Okay, got it. So I assume what this question is here is, let's see. Let's go ahead and pull an entry file in here. I assume this is probably more of a sliders type question, right? Where are the optimal sliders? So I've got a couple entries registered for tonight's main slate, just the quarter jukebox and the and one at the moment. These two contests are pretty similar, but the and one is 55K entrance and the jukebox is 33K entrance. So technically speaking, the sliders that you would use, the optimal amount of sliders that you would use if you wanted to fill these two contests uniquely would be different, right? For the quarter jukebox, it would be these sliders. For the and one, it would be these sliders, right? So this question is basically saying, it sounds like Pin Seeker saw maybe in a previous video where I did something like this, built 40 lineups using one set of sliders. and then filled them uniquely, right? So we'll let this build here. We'll go ahead. We'll walk through this process, and I'll show, what I did here. And this is how we recommend most of our users that are especially just starting out build their lineups, right? To play low entry fee, good contests based on our contest selection principles, and then get a unique lineup into every single contest, and which is going to spread out your variance here, right? So you use a unique lineup in every single contest, spread out your variance, give yourself as great a chance possible of a top 1% scoring lineup. But PinSeeker is right here that you are in some ways sacrificing having the exact optimal sliders. So I think really what's happening here is there's a trade-off where you are trading off having, potentially I may have lineups here that were built with a little bit higher variance, maybe a little bit higher correlation than was needed for the quarter jukebox in this particular case. But what I'm gaining there is I'm gaining more unique lineups. I'm smoothing out my variance a little bit in that way. And I'm also saving a little bit of time and allowing myself to have just one build where I can go in and edit all of my exposures. But there is a trade-off there. You would be perfectly fine to say, you know what, I only want to have, especially as this gets a little bit more extreme. In this particular case, these are both 20 max contests. They're both similarly sized. There's not going to be a ton of difference between these sliders. But let's just say you were playing, a bunch of single entries that are a lot smaller contests, right? And along with some 150 max contests, right? Especially if there's a big difference in stakes. If you told me you were playing some high stakes single entries, right? 500 people, high stakes single entry, and you were also playing, the mini max, big 150 max contest, you might want to split these up into two different builds because the way that these lineups are going to be built is going to be pretty significantly different from one another at that point. It might not be appropriate to just pick sliders that are in between and build everything uniquely. So I think in general, if you take a look at what the default values are for a particular contest, I think it's fine to just kind of pick some sliders that are roughly in between or pick sliders that correspond to one contest or the other and just roll with it. But if there is a significant difference in slider settings or there's a significant difference in stakes or your investment into one contest or another, there's nothing wrong with splitting these up and doing these separately. So it's kind of up to you. I think the advantage of keeping things grouped together is that you have one build from which you have to manage your exposures, and you get a unique lineup into every single contest. The advantage of splitting these up, doing separate builds and filling them separately is that the sliders are a little bit more optimized to that particular contest, but it's going to take a little bit longer to do, and you have to manage multiple builds. So depends just a little bit on what you're going for, what your goals are there. I would say 90% of the time I build everything together, right? I typically lean on the sliders that are a little bit higher, right? So if I'm playing a variety of different contests, I will just build everything at like a set of sliders that, is maybe the biggest overall settings for my contest, right? Because I would rather have lineups that are maybe a little bit too heavily leveraged to ownership fade or maybe a little bit too variant in my single entries than have contests that are too chalky in my multi-entry stuff. That's just the way I play. I would rather be too contrarian than too chalky. That's just my personal take, but there's definitely, some options here depending on the way that you want to approach this. So, all right, cool. Okay. And then there was another question from PinSeeker here. And he said, are the tickets you win in the satellite contest an entry in the future contest? I won a $33 entry last night and a $12 entry the night before. Those are confidence builders, in my opinion. Yes. Celebratory yes there. Or was I just lucky 2 nights in a row? I know it was SaberSim. My first win. Second place was 30 points back, and last night 20. Safe to say my score crushed the competition. Well, first of all, congratulations. Yes, those tickets are their free entry into future contests. So I have a couple here. I'll go ahead and pull up mine. I think at one point in baseball season last year, DraftKings was running satellites to the NASCAR Millie Maker that's coming up for Daytona. And they were overlaying like crazy. So I was playing them a fair bit here or there. I ended up winning 3 tickets before I kind of stopped playing those. But you can go in, you can click this tickets up here, and it will tell you, typically it will call out a specific contest. And if they know when that contest is about going to run, they will date it. So this is on February 20th. It'll say how many you have. If it's not a contest that's actually like scheduled yet, if they don't know when this contest is actually going to run, you may see something a little more generic here until it gets scheduled. But I actually think this contest is posted now, so I can probably just enter this. But that's the easiest way to see when those contests are for. So, but yeah, anyway, congratulations again. So, Robert says that he was pretty stressed out doing all the separate builds. Yeah, and that's the thing. I would say if that's the case for you, just pick some sliders that are in between or fit one like the contest that you're the most financially invested into, right? I know I come on here and preach, the sliders have been back tested and they've been put to their optimal positions, and that is true. That's a fact, right? But the reason most of the time I end up saying that most of the time is because I don't want people to dial in and think that's where the money's made by finding the right sliders. We've done a lot of that upfront work for you, but that doesn't mean that you're going to break the build or build lineups that are garbage if you're using sliders that are slightly different for the particular contest, right? Like if we used, you can look at this here. This is the single entry, maybe for something like the high five, right? The $5, right? So maybe you're playing the $5, but you're mixing in a bunch of other 20 maxes and you just end up deciding to use these sliders instead, right? You've got a lineup. You're going to build lineups that are maybe a little bit more leveraged to ownership, maybe have a little bit more high variance plays in there, but it's not like these are just going to build you awful lineups that you can't use. And a lot of that magic, a lot of that work that comes through that ends up making you winning lineups actually comes in step 3, editing your exposures, step 1, adjusting projections or ownership, and of course, late swapping, right? So it's kind of I know there's a little bit of a double-edged sword here of one, yes, the sliders have been optimized. They've been back tested for the contest you tell us you're playing, right? That is the optimal slider positions. Don't spend hours trying to dial in the optimal sliders here because we've done that work for you. But also don't make lineup building a painful process doing a separate build for every single individual contest that has slightly different slider positions, because it's not adding that much value either. So definitely double-edged sword there. But yeah, anyway, let's keep it going. So, Uvijay said, golf question. Are the Sims rerun ahead of the Sunday Showdown slate? Since final position is part of the final scores in those contests, just want to ensure SaberSim is accounting for that in the builds. Thanks. Yeah, we don't do a very good job of the sim alerts, and I know there's no timestamp up for golf here, but those are rerun when the slates get posted and the projections show up. So that is taking into account the current positional scoring and things like that there. Max has actually done a video here on our channel, Round 4 Showdown. Let me see if I can just search that here. Yeah, so Max actually did a video a year ago talking about, his strategy of how he builds these Round 4 Showdowns in particular, since they take into account that finishing position. There can be some additional value there. So I'd check this video out if you're playing those contests. It can be kind of fun. I still think they're kind of tough to beat, so I haven't been playing these as much, but can definitely be pretty fun there. So cool. Let's keep it going. Okay, KG said, hi, Jordan. Happy to see a new office hours video today. Burning question. Ooh, burning question. All right. When you get the error message about exposure deep into your build and strategy, do you just scratch the whole plan and go back to step 1 because you know it's not going to comply with your request, or do you just try to figure out where the issue lies? I'm asking because it's becoming quite annoying, but I try to bypass it with not good results. Look out for your boy. Yeah, so, okay, so I don't think you need to throw everything out and start from scratch. I think somebody responded to this comment. It was Epic Problem, and he made a good point. This is something I say all the time here. I think one thing that can be useful, is if you get the message saying you need to build more lineups, to treat that as an opportunity to just say, This is a flag to me that I can't find 20 lineups in the first 500 or 40 lineups in the first 500 that the builder thinks is viable, right? That doesn't necessarily mean these are bad lineups, or it doesn't necessarily mean you're taking the wrong approach. But I do think it's a good opportunity to take a step back and just treat it as a flag of like, okay, do I want to keep going with this, right? Because at that point, in some ways, you are disagreeing with the model. The model's not perfect. It doesn't pick up on everything. There's definitely value that can be added, but you have disagreed, and you've said that, no, the top 20 lineups that I can play in this contest are different. They're not captured in the first 500 that the builder is coming up with. But I don't think you need to give up on your entire approach to the slate if that happens, and if you want to proceed there. I think the best advice I can give is just go back to step one and make some adjustments, right? Think about who are the players that I'm lowering my exposure to and who are the players that I'm raising my exposure to, and do some of that instead in step one with the projection, right? If you're sitting here and you're wondering repeatedly why you're not getting any, maybe Kevin Durant, James Harden, right? Why am I not getting these guys in my lineups? I'm cranking up my exposure in step three and I'm not seeing any of them. And then I'm getting a message that I have to build more lineups. Well, their projection's low, right? They're projected for almost 4 points per dollar in a salary range where there are guys that are 4.5x, right? So pump their projection up, make them similar to other players in this range, right? Let's bump these guys up here a little bit. And maybe you're asking yourself, why am I getting so much Joel Embiid, right? Well, he's projected over 5x at an 11K, right? Bring his salary down a little bit. Bring this a little bit more in line with other players in the same range here. Maybe we bring him down right here, right? Something makes it a little bit closer here. And you could be doing this, maybe you're doing this to a half dozen players, right? And then start over, start with another build. And now these players are going to show up. We're going to naturally be getting more of them in the lineups, and we can increase their exposure or fine tune things here in step three, right? So I know I preach a lot about step three and how building yourself a pool of viable lineups and making adjustments here is a little bit safer. But step three ultimately is still a little bit more about fine tuning, right? If you're making significant changes, you're going to have to do some of that in step one. Otherwise, your pool of lineups just isn't going to fit the way the contest is playing, right? So now we can see here, we're getting some Durant, right? And maybe that's too much, right? Maybe we back this back off, right? Maybe that's a little bit too much Harden, right? And what happened to Embiid, who we lowered, right? Maybe that's a little bit too low, right? Maybe we took this too far. So now we're doing a little bit of quality controlling. We're getting the lineups back where we want them by having adjusted the projections and then adjusting the exposures here on step three. But overall, I would not say, this idea that you need to start over from scratch anytime you see the rebuild lineups message is probably not true. And, certainly not true with your overall research, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you need to like completely throw out everything you've researched. It might just mean you need to go back to step one, make some adjustments there so your pool of 500 lineups is more the way you want it to be. Dial things in step three, and then you're good to go. So let me know if that helps. Yeah. So, I guess maybe part of the thing here is like, going back to step one to me is not starting over from scratch, right? You've already put in the work. You've done a test build, right? You've seen how the builder's kind of thinking about the slate. You've probably done some research, right? That's still all valuable work. You're not starting all the way from scratch, but going back to step one, yes, maybe is something that you need to do. So I don't feel like going back to step one and making some adjustments after doing a test build to start your process is going back from scratch, but that is probably, if it feels that way to you, maybe that is what you probably have to do there. So, cool. Let's keep it going. I know there are plenty of questions coming in YouTube chat. That's awesome. Mondays are always a fun stream here. Lots of questions. I'm going to hit these other questions in Slack first, and we'll go from there. Rick has a contest selection. He said, many slates outside of football and NBA have contests that don't fit the criteria. There are still ones I want to enter, so I always look to play payout structure. This is a very arbitrary number, but I usually see what 10th place pays, then enter the number of lineups. Okay. I see what 10th place pays, then enter the number of lineups that would give me total entry fees that would provide a 5x payout if I hit a top 10 line. For example, if it is a $1.20 max and 10th place pays $30, I would enter 6 lineups in that contest instead of maxing it. If 10th place plays more than 5x for max entries, then I usually just max it. I guess my question is there a rule of thumb of how many lineups to enter versus maxing the contest? Because sometimes maxing the contest can be a losing. Okay, I get where you're going with this. Can be a losing proposition even with the top 1% finish, depending on entrance and payouts. Sorry for the long-winded question. Thanks for all you guys are doing on a daily basis. Good question. Great question, really. Definitely something important to think about. I don't know the math on what you've described here with looking at this like 5x payout for a top 10% finish and whatever. I assume that it works out, that it makes sense what you're thinking about here. I will tell you what I do. I think it's a little bit simpler is I don't ever fill up more than 1% of all the entries in a contest. Pretty straightforward for me. So there were some NBA showdowns yesterday that were $1.20 maxes like you've described here, but they only had 1189 entrants. I only put 11 entries in those. So 1% max total entries in the contest is just my rule of thumb. Doesn't really matter for today since I don't think there's any small slates, but we can maybe go look at like Hockey Showdown, right? Let's see. So this is a decent example, right? Maybe you're playing this like NHL Showdown. I wouldn't put more than 14 entries in this if I was playing it. I wouldn't take up more than 1% of the total lineups in the contest. I wouldn't put more than 11 or 12 entries in this one. Basically, thinking about it from a top 1% equity standpoint, right? I don't want to put so many entries in that even if I basically like nailed the slate and played it perfectly and had every single one of my lineups having a high scoring outcome, I wouldn't want to create lineups that didn't even have top 1% equity because there was no more room in the top percentile of the contest. That's the way I think about it. But I'm sure what you're looking at here in terms of looking at 10th place and paying for your entry fees and things like that probably is just a different route to a similar result or different means to the same end, I guess is actually like literally the right expression to use there. I'm sure it works. I haven't ever done the math on that particular method. I think it's very easy to just look and say, I'm not playing more than 1% of the total entries in the contest. I think yours, off the top of my head, I think yours is probably a little bit more conservative than mine, is my guess, but not to say anything's wrong with that, right? All this is about is not necessarily competing with yourself, right? So, but I think it's a good thing to think about if you're playing smaller contests in general. So, and then on your first note here, right? Smaller contests, smaller slates, smaller sports, there are going to be a lot. Most of the contests aren't going to fit the contest selection principle perfectly. So, my answer to that is always, I would be entering all of the great GPPs that are available from main slates on the bigger sports because they are very high EV and they are very soft. But if you want to spread out your variants, start branching into turbos and showdowns and night slates and things like that, you do have to make some sacrifices with contest selection. You're going to sacrifice some EV, but you are going to smooth out your variants a little bit there as well. So kind of a mixed bag, but cool. Let's keep it going. Rough 'em up asked a good question here. Kind of catching me at an interesting time with this particular question, actually. So he said, how would you suggest we use SaberSim to find good picks for something like PrizePicks? I answered this question just a couple weeks ago, and the answer was different. At the time, what I basically said was to kind of back out the actual implied probability of a win based on the payouts that they are giving you, because our prop calculator isn't like integrated naturally with PrizePicks. It takes a player, it takes an over or an under, it takes the line and the stats and the actual odds and tells you if it's a good bet, right? But you can't say like pick these two and it's a 3x payout or however PrizePicks works, right? You can't really do that. So you kind of have to back it out. At the moment, the prop betting calculator is kind of in the midst of being deprecated. We are kind of pivoting a little bit with the way that our betting product works. So there is going to be more news coming on that front here in the next couple weeks, but we are kind of making a pivot there. So there'll be more news there. I would say in the meantime, if you are looking for prize pick picks, I think probably the best way that you can use the app is to just look at the detailed stat projections and combine, the multiple picks together of players that on average score over or under wherever the line is set. And I know that's not perfect, especially because it's not going to, really take into account the applied probabilities of these events. But on these sites, I think you can stack together, two players that at least on average beat the line and make your pick there. If you have access to sports betting where you live, I would check that out instead. In my experience with some of these sites here, you are not really getting a great line on these bets. I think they have propped up in places where sports betting is not legal, primarily as a way to kind of get that experience. But the lines that you will get from actual sports books are quite a bit more competitive in terms of paying out closer to what the implied probability of these events actually are. You just don't really make a lot of money for what you are being asked to predict on these sites. So I would say that that if you have access to the actual sports books, I would check those out, and check out the sports betting channel in Slack. Ross has been giving out a free pick from what is ultimately going to kind of become our new betting product every single day for almost 2 months now, getting close to 2 months. And those picks are, let me pull it up here. Those picks are 35 and 17 for a total net unit gain of 36.7 units so far. So, it's right here. I forgot I was sharing my screen. So yeah, here you go. You can see the history of the picks. This is all just linked directly in the sports betting thing as well. So I checked this out. Especially if you have access to sports betting where you live. If you don't, hopefully it's coming soon. Then I think to kind of scratch the itch, I think some of these sites can be a good idea. And again, I would look just seeing what does the model project is the average number for a particular stat, right? Maybe you're combining the Giannis under 11.5 rebounds and the LaMelo Ball or the Jason Tatum over 23.5 points or something like that, right? At least that on average, the Sims like that bet for you. You don't have as much of the kind of nuanced, this is how many units to bet, this is your average win expectation, but I think it should still work out for you in the meantime. So, but cool. Underrated said I had the same question as Rick. I just answered it. So if you missed it, I would check out that. Go back to the stream a couple minutes, check it out. Let me know if you have any other questions, and we will jump. Oh, okay. Rough 'em Up said, live in Alabama, so no sports betting. Unfortunately, I agree to just do it for fun, and maybe I could use SaberSim to help. If that's the case, I bet you can, I imagine, is doing it kind of similar to what I said, and just kind of, perusing what the average stats look like for certain players, and then combining two plays where you're at least on the right side of the Sims with it. Especially if you're doing it just for fun, looking for a little bit of an extra sweat. I think that's a great way to do it, and probably is profitable. I think most likely. I don't know that it is I don't think there is a current solution using the Sims that would allow you to maximize profit. But I think there is a way you can use the Sims to play in a profitable way. And I think that's probably how I'd go about doing it. So, and fingers crossed that you get sports betting there soon, but I imagine Alabama maybe is not so close to that. I don't know. I'd be curious if there's any, how close legislation is there to legalizing it, but strikes me as maybe a state that might take a little bit longer getting there, but curious. Let me know if you know where it stands there. So anyway, I'm going to keep going. And yeah, he said, no, we're last to do anything. Yeah, that's kind of what I was figuring. I know it's like been pulling teeth getting anything moving in Texas too. I know we have a lot of users from Texas. I think. Does Texas even have DFS? I might be wrong, but anyway, let me just keep moving here and keep answering questions here. So we'll go back to the top. Okay, so Craig had a 2-part question. This is a RunPure question here. So he said, when looking at the projections on SaberSim, you can change your source. That is SaberSim, RunPure, or average. When I upload my own projections, does it just use those by default? When looking at the drop-down box, I don't see the ability to switch to my own projections. That is a good question. Man. Okay. I need to test this, actually. So let's do a test together here. Actually, I'm going to say no. I'm going to download these projections here, and I'm going to open these. We're going to do a test. We're going to do a test together live here and just see how this works. Because I have a hunch, but I don't want to give you the wrong information. So I have a projection file here now, and we'll call this test projections here. And then let me turn my screen off for a second, and we'll pull up a RunPure link and try this out. Okay. Let me pull my screen back up here. All right. Okay, so let's go over to NBA for tonight and take a look here. Okay. Where is the... Am I crazy? Where is the... Oh, maybe RunPure doesn't have the projections up for the slate yet today. Is the only thing I can think of here. Maybe that's it. Okay. So maybe there's no projections up for the slate yet today. So here's what I think happened. So I'm pretty sure that when you pick that little drop down and you can choose between RunPure and SaberSim or an average, that changes the My Projection column. So if you upload a custom projection, right? Like, so if I upload this here, we can see if I upload the test projection, it's going to just overwrite any projections that are in here and show you which ones have changed, right? And it will, like, regardless of which one you had selected before, it's going to overwrite projections here that are different. And it will use those projections when you're actually building lineups. So, I guess the answer to this is if you upload your own projections, yes, it should use those by default. But what you don't have a separate projection set that you can then switch back and forth between. So like you wouldn't be able to go use average and then switch back to my custom and then switch back to just SaberSim, right? You've already uploaded a set of projections and that's what you're using now. You can hit reset players and go back to whatever the projection set you were at before is. But there's not a easy way to just flip back and forth. So put another way, whatever is in the My Projection column is what's going to get used. This column, the editable one, regardless of what you have set anywhere else. So, and then Craig said, second part of the question is, when using my own aggregate of projections around the industry, is there anything you see wrong with this? Does it change the Sims drastically? There's nothing wrong with it. There's certainly nothing wrong with it. All that's going to happen, why is turnovers all the way over here? It's kind of weird. Basically what happens is, like, so say your average, it doesn't even matter where they come from. Say your projection for Joel Embiid is 56.42, so 2 less than we haven't projected. What we'll do is in the simulations for the Sixers game, every single game sim we have for Joel Embiid, he will get 2 less points in that particular sim. So then when we build your lineups and we pull from different buckets of sims to build each lineup, every single simulation, Joel Embiid will be scoring 2 less points than he actually scored in the game sim. And that's just true. That's true if you're using custom projections of any kind, whether you're adjusting them yourself, whether you're using RunPure or another partner's projections, or using your own aggregates or whatever. That's how it works. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. It will just kind of shift every little player up or down a little bit based on where your projections are versus where the simulation projections are. So, but a common question here is, do I ruin the sims here? Or do I lose the value of the sims? And the answer is no, subject to how good the quality of your projections actually are, right? If you're uploading bad projections, then yeah, your result's going to be worse. But probably an industry aggregate isn't going to be worse. Probably not. I don't know how much value it necessarily adds, but yeah. So, okay. So TCAP asks a good question. Need some help to adjust exposure after late swap has been performed. For late swaps, you need to do your exposure before. First of all, hang on. I need to refresh my page here. I can't have both instances of SaberSim up at the same time. But for late swap, you need to adjust your exposure before. The reason why is at the moment, we don't rebuild any lineup more than once. So when you build your lineups originally using SaberSim, right? I always talk about here how you have this pool of 500 or 1,500 lineups, and you can sort through those and adjust exposures at your leisure, and we'll just go ahead and make adjustments here, right? In late swap, we don't do that. We rebuild every lineup once. Hang on, give me a sec here. Okay, thought my browser was crashing on me. We rebuild every lineup once. So we're planning on updating this, right? But you'll see right now, it just rebuilds every lineup one time. So actually here, let's real quickly here. This is a little bit confused because I never uploaded these entries that I built here. So, okay, so we have 40. So now we should see 40 here, right? So we're rebuilding every lineup once. So you can't edit your exposures after because there's no exposures to change, right? There's only 40 lineups. We can't change the exposures. So you need to do that before the build for late swap if you want to set those. So we'll let this build here, right? And we can go back here. And we had a couple exposures we wanted to set before, right? So, maybe we want to maintain that our Joel Embiid exposure stays at, maybe we want 20 to 40% exposure here, right? We don't want to be too far over or under the field on Embiid. And maybe we had, our Durant exposure was, what do we want? We want maybe like 10. And our Harden exposure, we wanted, 15? Something like that. Now we can late swap and set this beforehand. Now, the other thing is that when you're actually late swapping, there is salary issues, positional issues, right? All of these things because you're rebuilding lineups after lock that can prevent these exposures from being followed exactly. So all of these exposures, when you do them in late swap, are kind of treated a little bit more as guidelines because we don't want people getting in a situation where they have to make an adjustment with 2 minutes left because news broke and they're getting blocked because of exposures that they have set. So the builder will follow these as best as it can, but it generally treats these things as more of kind of guidelines rather than hard and fast rules. So in this particular case, because it's before lock and it's very easy for the builder to follow everything, we were able to do it, right? Embiid, his exposure is right where we wanted it. Durant's is right where we wanted it. Harden is right where we wanted it, right? But if you were actually doing this and there were players that have already been locked in and certain salary issues, right? It won't always follow this 100% to the T. So good thing to note there. Okay. Let me go ahead. We'll keep it going. Keep answering some more questions here. Okay. Mark said Daytona is going to be interesting, always a crash fest, but with a new car going to be crazy for sure. And Matt said NASCAR is always a fun sweat. I don't know NASCAR as well, personally. It's something I haven't played a lot of. So as we get closer to the start of the season there, that's another sport that we're definitely looking at investing more into for this season. We have the slates up in the app, no projections. At one point we did have projections, but just didn't believe in the model that we had created and ended up taking it down. That's another sport we want to invest in a little bit as well. So as we get a model potentially going up and maybe even get sims going for NASCAR, we'll support that by getting some content going. I know there are some folks at SaberSim that play NASCAR a little more, maybe get those guys on to talk about their strategy and their approach a little bit, and go from there. But KY Surprise says, when doing a 3-entry max contest, is it best to upload from rank or unique for the best chances? If you're just building 3 lineups, right? So let's say this says 3 lineups, or wait, that's a late swap. Let's go back to this, right? If you're just building 3 lineups, there we go, 3, and entering them into a single 3 max contest, and that's all you're doing with the entry editor, it doesn't matter, right? They're going to fill them the same way. On one hand, you'll use, again, the rank would fill the top 3 lineups in, which would be your only 3 lineups, and the unique fill would make sure that you have a unique lineup into each entry in the contest, which would be those 3 lineups anyway. The rank and unique fill, and like the fill methods in general, describe a little bit more how the builder will handle filling your lineups if you are playing multiple contests, right? So if we go back, I think this will give you a better idea of what I'm talking about. If we go back to my 40 lineup builds, right? If I use rank, what's actually going to happen here is the top 20 lineups from that 40 lineup build are going to be entered in both of these contests. Lineups 21 through 40 will be entered in neither of them, right? That's rank. The unique fill, is going to put a unique lineup from the build into every single contest. So the quarter jukebox is going to have 20 completely different lineups from the and 1. Now they're going to be randomly sorted from there, right? It's not necessarily that this contest has 1 through 20 and this contest has 21 through 40. It's a random unique fill, but you will know that you have a unique lineup in every single contest. But if you're doing just a single contest and filling it with the entry editor, it doesn't actually matter really what you choose. So I would say rank is probably slightly better, only because it will help you. It will avoid making a mistake. If you build, for example, 100 lineups and use the unique fill and fill it into a 3 max contest, those 3 lineups could come from anywhere in that 100. But rank fill will always use the top 3. So if you're using the entry editor to just fill a single contest, I think it's probably slightly a little bit safer to use the unique rank fill, because it will prevent a situation from that. But even if you did use unique fill with a 20 or 100 lineup build, it probably wouldn't even be that big of a deal because those lineups are still good. But that's what I would recommend. First of all, that's how that works. And what I would recommend is using rank fill more often if you're just filling a single contest. So looks like Craig had the same question. So let me know, guys, if that helped clear that up for you a little bit there. John says he won $4 thanks to SaberSim and golf. Never even placed before. Congratulations. I think the model was pretty good for Tournament of Champions. I know there were a couple winners in the golf channel in Slack. So awesome stuff there. I had a decent day. I actually had a sweat like at the end of Saturday night. I guess it's not really a sweat, right? Golf sweats are so weird, like where you're really only sweating like when you really actually get to the end. But I was really in a good spot Saturday night, and then it kind of faded out quite a bit throughout Sunday. That Justin Thomas surge kind of killed me too. I had like essentially completely faded him. I think I had like 10%, and that kind of ruined it a lot for me. But I had a ton of Rom, a ton of Cam Smith, which put all of my lineups in a really good spot, and then just had like the right amount of like Matt Jones and some of those other value guys that kind of finished closer to the top. That I had definitely had it going for a little bit, but anyway. Mark said, if I lock players after my build and then I want to do a late swap, do I need to lock those players again? I think so. So like we can just check this here. I think you do. Right? If we just if we hit lock button on Anthony Simons, he's not necessarily just going to, he's not going to be locked over here. So what will happen? Let me show you here. Let's actually just do a test together real quick, because I think it'll be easier to see kind of what I'm referring to here. So let's widen this back up to 40. And let's do Whiteside lock instead. So we lock Whiteside, we click save, we go to the entries. So we're doing this pre-lock, right? We're pretending, so we're getting our lineups in. We'll fill unique, 100% Whiteside, all looks good. Let's download these, and we upload them. Okay, so now it's after lock. So you can see here, right? Whiteside's min exposure has been set to 100. So he is essentially locked in, right? So now let's say we needed to late swap. And he's going to be 100% here, right? All going to be looking good. Oh, he's not. Okay, so actually this I think is a little bit what I mentioned before about how this is treated a little bit more as a guideline than a hard rule. I expected him to be locked there. I think if we hit lock, hang on. That surprised me, actually. That really shouldn't have happened like that. It should be pretty easy for the builder to just force 100% exposure to him, even in a late swap. I don't know if that lock button's really working the way it's supposed to on the late swap thing here. It might be a little bug. Let's see. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be working totally right. So I think there's a little bug there. I'll report that to the rest of the team. We'll get that fixed there. I would say, I think probably the easiest thing to do in the meantime, just make sure that min exposure is 100 here. I think what you could also do is if we go here, I wonder if we lock him in here. Oh, he is locked in here. Interesting. But he didn't show up in 100% of our lineups. Huh. Let's see. Let's try again. Okay, so we got 100 this time. I would say this. I would say if you're locking players in, I'll see what was going on there with that, because that was kind of weird. I think it's probably just safer to just lock the player in here in step 1 when you're doing your late swap, and then they should just be locked in. And you should just be good to go. Any player that's locked here is going to show up 100% of the time, no matter what. So that's what I would do. But Craig said, that's what I was wondering. When I do upload, it does override the my projections, but I just didn't know if it used those by default or not. It does. So, let's see. Keep moving here. Jody says, I love how you guys are using our insight to build the site. I'm impressed and we'll be sticking around. Love to hear that. Glad to see that you're sticking around. And I know you've been excited about some of the college sports and other things like that. So that is all coming here. HC said, what are your thoughts on using late swap for a single entry lineup? I think it's a great idea. And I actually think one thing that I've noticed single entry players do too often, and I think is a mistake, maybe just because you have a single entry lineup, but I see a lot of players out there that will build their lineup and then news comes out throughout the night. And since you only have one lineup, a lot of times it's like, oh, well, I never had that guy, so I don't care anyway. Right? Like they build their lineup. They have no Sixers in the entire lineup, but 30 minutes into the slate, we get news that Joel Embiid is going to sit. And I think with single entry players in particular, I hear a lot of times like, I didn't have any sixers anyway, I'm just going to roll with it. And in reality, you should be swapping there, or you should at least be considering to swap, or at least seeing how the lineups look now. So even on the nights where I'm just playing a single lineup, I swap just as often as I do when I'm playing 150 lineups, because news is news and it gives you the edge in the same way. So, but I think, because when you're playing multiple lineups, multiple entries, you don't know exactly as intuitively who you have in every lineup. So I think it's easier to just say, I'm just going to swap when there's news and just rebuild. Whereas with single entry players, I think there's a little bit more of like, these are my guys. This is my lineup. I know who I'm playing. I'm going to swap if somebody in my lineup's out, but otherwise I'm going to stand pat. And I think that's a mistake. So I absolutely think you should be doing late swap, even if you're just playing a single entry lineup every time news breaks, the same way you would be if you're playing multiple lineups, because that news is valuable, and you can swap into a lineup with more win equity just as easily when you're playing a single entry lineup as you are if you're playing multi-entry. So Craig said, going back to KY Surprise's question, when you sort your contests in the entry editor, for instance, sorting by buy-in, if you then fill by rank, does it fill those contests starting by highest buy-in? No, it does not. So just to be clear, rank fill is going to take the highest overall Saber score lineup from your build and put it as the first lineup into every contest first. Then it's going to take the highest Saber score lineup and send it into the second send it in as the second lineup into every single contest that isn't just a single entry, right? That at least has multiple lineups. And then the third lineup, and then the fourth. The buy-in sorting doesn't matter at all, right? So rank, let's say I had a single entry, a 3 max, a 20 max, and a 150 max here, right? And I filled one 150 max build, 150 lineup build by rank. The first lineup in that list would be in every contest. It would be the lineup in the single entry. It would be the first lineup in the 3 max. It would be the first lineup in the 20 max. And it would be the first lineup in the 150 max. Then the second lineup goes in. There's no more room in the single entry. That contest is filled, but it's the second lineup in the 3 max, the second lineup in the 20 max, the second lineup in the 150 max, right? That's how rank works. Doesn't matter how it's sorted. Unique fill, right? The flip side, unique fill. So let's do the same thing. Let's say again that I have a 150 max, a 20 max, a 3 max, and a single entry. That's 174 unique entries. If I took a 174 lineup build and filled them into all contests uniquely, every single entry that I have would get a unique lineup. There would be no 2 entries that had the same lineup in it, but it would be all completely randomly spread out from that 174. The single entry could get lineup 94. It could also get lineup 2. It could also get lineup 173, right? Every single entry gets a unique random lineup from that lineup build. We do want to add some more kind of fill methods here to accomplish some common requests. So a very common request we get is for what we are probably going to end up calling unique rank, something along those lines, which would be the ability to say, for example, for just these 2 contests, that you still get a unique lineup in each, right? You still get, there's no 2 lineups similar, but instead you get exactly lineups 1 through 20 in the $1 contest, and you get exactly lineups 21 through 40 in the 25-cent contest. So it would basically be the way to fill uniquely, but to make sure your highest dollar contests were getting your best lineups by SaberScore. That is something that we're kind of working on. That is something that will come in a future update. It's a very common request, but for now, that's the way they work. So rank filled by SaberScore by rank into every contest, randomly unique lineup from your lineup set into every single contest. If you are very opinionated on what lineup goes into particular entries beyond that for now, I would recommend one of 2 things. One is using the checkboxes and separate lineup builds to fill your lineup separately, right? If you say like, I want a particular set of lineups in my, especially I know if you have a wide spread of stakes, right? If you're playing a $500 single entry and the mini max, right? Maybe you're not okay. This is kind of going back to what we were talking about at the start of the stream. Maybe you're not okay just leaving that up to pure chance what ends up in the $500 single entry versus what goes into the mini max, right? In that case, let's just pretend that these are those two contests. Select one, fill that with the lineup set that you actually want for that contest, then fill the other one. Right? You can use these checkboxes combined with the fill contests to like selectively fill these at different times. The alternative would be to, use some of the entry editor, but alongside that, doctor it a little bit in the CSV file, right? So you can like get this close, get this about where you want it, and then download this and open your entries file and make some final tweaks there. The goal, obviously, long-term is that you can do virtually anything you want in the entry editor without ever having to look at a CSV file. So we have more features coming planned for that. But Matt says, sounds like it should be a good year for SaberSim updates. It should. It really should. We have, start of the year, we're kind of starting to plan out what the year looks like and some of the goals we have here. I think it's going to be an exciting year. I hinted at some of these things, or maybe not even hinted so much, just kind of talked about some of the things on stream here today. There's more planned beyond that. Obviously, we have really, invested into all different sides of our team in the past 6 months or so, whether that's, the models themselves, the projections, the ownership projections, whether that is the product features, the actual functionality of the app, content, the streams, the shows, things like that, the support so that people are getting answers quicker. We have really, we've doubled down on all of that stuff in the past 6 months and pretty excited for 2022 here. So a lot planned, a lot to look forward to. Should be fun. So, but I think for now, let's see. There's one other question here. Catalyst Joe. Oh, I saw this question the other day and I missed it. So also I love John Sams Jr. here just preaching the let's get those likes up squad here. Yeah, that's something I should say more. So yeah, give me a thumbs up if you enjoy the show, especially if you watch this here every week or every day. Give me a thumbs up. But you know what? On that note, give me a subscribe too if you enjoy watching this show here. You'll get a notification every time I go live. I know there's a couple streams out there that I like and always hate when I miss it, especially if I was planning on watching it. So if you give me a subscribe, you'll get a little notification every single time the show goes live and make it easy on you. So, but anyway, Catalyst Joe, when I'm on the third stage and want to filter by team, is there a list of what to type to get the team I want? Sometimes it's simple, but sometimes the search by name seems to not be as simple as typing the abbreviation. Good question. Let me see. I'm going to have to remember how to do this here. Okay. You know what? I don't think there is an easier way to do it than that. So I know what you're talking about, right? Like you can type Utah in here, right? Okay, so I think the easiest way is still to type it in, and I know that's not great, and sometimes you're going to get like other players that don't even belong, right? We get Bobby Portis when we search for poor because Portis, right? You also get both players on the same side of the game. I think one thing that can be kind of interesting here, there's a couple options. First of all, is you can see the actual team stacks, right? I know that's not great, but like if you wanted to see, what your San Antonio stacks look like, this is going to show you filtering this way every lineup that has 2 or more San Antonio players. Another option is to, instead of using like a filter, to use the sort. So you can click on the team here, right? And sort this, and you can see what your exposure looks like to every single team on the slate. So like we can go slow, like step by step. The only 3 Brooklyn players, for example, I have are Durant, Harden, and Kyrie. Now you're going to see a lot of empty extra stuff here doing this, which isn't great. But I think this can be a decent way of quickly just seeing your team exposure to certain players, right? This was something that I believed we had actually planned to change, and I think it might have gotten swept under the rug here. At one point, the plan was to make these clickable so that you could click either Brooklyn or Portland in this case, and then just immediately filter by only those teams, right? But I think that might have gotten missed there or forgotten about. So you can do it here on step 1, right? I know that's not as useful. You're not looking at the lineups necessarily, but you can filter by step one. This is something that is somewhat new to a recent, well, not so recent now, to our most recent redesign, this ability to filter here like this. But on step 3, I don't think there's a super easy way to do it at the moment without doing that search. So, and I know you had a question here about like some of those abbreviations aren't working at all. If you find one of those, let me know. So what I mean is like on the actual build, for example, searching. Here, let me show you what I mean. So I'm not so much referring to like Bobby Portis showing up when you search for Portland, right? Because there's not really much we can do about that. That's part of his name, so it's going to show up here. But I think you had mentioned here, I remember wherever this original message was, it was in office hours. You had mentioned that there was a search. Well, let me see it. Here it is. Faux works for Phoenix, but new doesn't work for New York. Okay, so if you match, let me say this. If you match the abbreviation exactly the way that we've written it in the app, it should work. So like you should get Houston for Houston, right? You get both sides of it, but you should get Houston for Houston. I'm curious, actually, if we hide that opponent column. Yeah, you still get Philly. Okay. So that didn't work. But if you match the abbreviation exactly the way we've described it, it should work. So like New York, you get New York, right? If you run into a situation where it's not working and you've matched the abbreviation exactly, let somebody know in the support channel, where the office hours channel is fine too, but the support channel is probably a little bit better. What that probably means is that we have a mismatch on our end between the back end and the front end abbreviation, which does happen occasionally. I think most of those are sorted out, but it does come up especially more on smaller sports from time to time. So it could be something where like, maybe for Arizona team on the back end, it thinks it's ARI, and on the front end, it thinks it's ARZ or something like that. Can be something like that. But I know that's not the most satisfying answer. I know that's maybe not exactly what you were hoping for here. But I do think the search works pretty good in the meantime. And go from there. So, but anyway, I think that is it for today. We'll make this the last question here. Kevin said, can you save the exposure from the previous build and reuse on the next build? You cannot, unfortunately, at the moment. It's a good idea. We've talked about implementing that as a new feature in a future update. There's not a very easy way to do it right now, to be completely honest. I think one thing you can do if you really want to, it's something I've messed around with here a little bit before in the past, is you can download the lineups. This is kind of going to be an Excel kind of thing, but if you download the lineups yourself, and then you can use some kind of like count if function to back into the exposures yourself, you can then upload those back into step 1 and say like my min and max exposures are plus or minus 10% of whatever the actual exposure is of this build. That's the closest way you can get to it right now, and it requires a little bit of Excel knowledge. Otherwise, not really an easy way to do that at the moment, unfortunately. So I would say in general, always good to research throughout the day, to play around with builds, but as best as you can, build, especially in a sport like NBA, build up against lock, right? If you are building your lineups and dialing in exposures an hour before an NBA lock, you are probably asking to be put into a tight spot of having news break and having to redo some of that 30 minutes before lock or 20 minutes before lock or 15 minutes before lock. So, yeah, but John says, how many players can we lock before step 2? You can lock as many as can fit. You'll run into lineup constraints, but like you'd run into like lineup and salary constraints, but you could theoretically lock a player into every single position except for the util spot. And as long as it worked out salary wise, build lineups that way. So, as long as it literally doesn't break it, like if you lock the most expensive player at every single position, it's not going to work. But as long as that actual lineup is viable and there's lineups that can be made, you can lock as many as you want. How many should you lock is a different question. Depends on how many lineups you're playing, depends on what kind of contest you're playing, but I'd be a little cautious with the old lock button personally. I don't lock players very often. There are times where I have 100% exposure to players, but in general, there are not a lot of slates where I'm going in and locking any player before the build. It's a pretty aggressive stance. And there are situations where a player is projected spectacularly well and I end up getting to 100% exposure to them. But you should just be aware that, pressing that lock button before the build is a pretty aggressive stance. So, but nothing wrong with it if you're a more risky player too, right? Like some players have like a strategy of, kind of playing with cores, right? Where, you've got 3 to 4 players that are in 100% of your lineups and you're rotating other players around them. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you a volatile playing style where you're going to lose a lot and you're going to really win on the nights you hit. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just not the way I play, but the app's not going to stop you from doing that, right? Like maybe you're building out your core and you're playing, let's see, do we have any, I don't know. Building out your core, maybe it's Giannis and a couple of these value guys, right? Maybe we get a couple of these like really good value plays here. Whatever, core 4 here, right? And then we build. It's not going to stop you from locking as many players as you want as long as they can find lineups. So if you lock players that aren't positionally eligible together, right? If you have 3 guys that are all listed as center/utility, you can't build lineups like that. Or if you've locked players in that exceed the maximum salary, right? Then you'll you can't build lineups. So Craig says when your locked player gets injured in the first 5 minutes and he's in 150 lineups, you'll change your stance from locking from then on. Yeah, and I would say for 150 lineups, it's virtually a player would have to be so spectacularly overprojected or underpriced, however you want to describe it, for me to lock a player into 150. It's like just probably virtually never going to happen for me personally. And you would see that too if you were just building lineups by default with the 150 max sliders. You're almost never going to naturally walk into a player that's in 100% of them, unless it's that situation where I'm talking about a guy that's like projected for 8, 9, 10x their DraftKings salary, right? But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen on its own very often. And I don't, when I play 150 lineups, I don't very often get to the guy that's 100% exposed. So 78% Embiid is our highest exposure. Even in a guy that's projected for 7x, right? We're seeing sometimes just like 38% here. So, but if you were running, it depends. This is what I mean about it depending on how many lineups you're playing, right? If you're playing 3 lineups, you're almost certainly going to have multiple players that are at 100%, right? It's just the way it works. So, thinking about these locking players and your core players, it does depend a lot on not only what contest you're playing and how much variance you need and how much diversity you need in your lineups, right? But also how many lineups you're playing, period, because there's a big difference, even just at 20%, right? 20% of your 20 lineups is only 4 individual lineups, right? You could have 10 lineups or 15 lineups in your 150, right? And that only be like 10% exposure to a player, right? So it means a lot more when you are locking a player the more lineups you are playing. But I feel like everybody kind of gets this. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. So we'll let that one go. But I think I'm going to go ahead and we'll call it there for today's stream. It's a great stream for a Monday here. As always, the Mondays are always pretty exciting here. I know everybody, after coming off a weekend of DFS, along with the weekly max challenge stuff, there's always a lot to get to. So thanks again for everybody that tuned in, asked questions, participated. We will be right back here again tomorrow, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you have questions, go ahead and pop them into the Office Hours channel in Slack. You'll see, as always, the questions that come into Slack and email first are the ones that I get to first. So definitely do that. For everybody that won prizes, otherwise involved in the weekly max challenge, just stay tuned for, I would basically say, just keep an eye on your email over the next week as we get information out about giving out some of the final prizes. The week 18 participants, or the all 18 weeks participants, I should say. And also the what am I talking about? The free rolls. So we'll get news out here. I just realized I was wondering why I can't see emojis on my end. So I was wondering why HC keeps saying elbow cough, and I realized it's the dab. So I was like, why does it keep saying elbow cough emoji? But it's the dab emoji. So awesome stuff there. But anyway, see you guys tomorrow. Good luck tonight if you're playing NBA or hockey or anything else. And we'll see you here again tomorrow. Take care. See ya.